a problem. It's just so heavy and weight on us.
It's not just about friendship.
Push myself to learn more about Christianity, why we believe what we believe, why we do what we do.
If you can't talk about it, you can't get over it.
Our priests are wonderful leaders. They are very strong spiritual leaders.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hello everyone, welcome to Lighthouse. We have a jam-packed episode for you guys tonight, so bring your popcorn and sit tight.
So for those of you joining us at home, Lighthouse is our way of bringing God's light into your house during these challenging times. My name is Nardine.
And I'm Andrew.
So Andrew, have you been going in isolation? I heard you're trying to pick up a new hobby.
Yeah, it's been tough to be honest, you know, with work and uni and everything happening at home. It's been a bit hard, but you know what? I was thinking, how am I going to get closer to God, you know? How am I going to reach that spiritual high? So I've made a little video for you guys to show, to see.
Sounds good.
What am I going to do today? Oh, you're a genius. I know what to do. How to play the Coptic symbols. Perfect. I am a genius. Perfect. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Daniel.
Yeah,
What's that sound?
I don't know, let's check it out.
Alright, let's go. What are you doing?
Wow, Andrew, that is incredible. I'm actually very proud of you. I feel like once the doors open to church, you're going to be the first deacon there.
I'll be the first one.
I know.
First one through the door.
Sounds good.
So what have you been doing through in isolation?
Yeah, I've been enjoying my time. It's been nice and quiet, been studying. Dad's been cooking a lot of food now that we stopped fasting. He's been cooking amazing food. But I don't know, he woke up this morning and just felt a bit different, and I didn't really understand why. So I went downstairs and I asked him, like, what's for breakfast today? And I recorded it for you guys.
So, Dad?
Yeah.
What feast are we having this morning?
We're going to have food today, Nadine.
What?
You know what?
No.
Because everyone, I believe, right, has been eating too much meat. Everyone's getting lazy, we're putting on weight, we're putting on all this unhealthy food, desserts and sweets.
Okay.
Time to remind us again of the Lent, okay?
Yes, Dad.
Because food is a very beautiful, stable Egyptian diet. You know some of the benefits of food?
I have no idea.
You know one of the benefits, it's got a lot of nutrition.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of the food
Okay.
is actually prevents birth defects.
Birth defects?
Yes, that's why all the cops are very intelligent.
Most of them.
So I'm going to make you a nice lovely food dish today.
Sure.
And it's going to be
It's
gourmet
gonna be better,
food.
right?
Yes, of
We'll
course,
have
a little bit
something
of
in
that,
there,
but
at
then it's a reminder of the Lent. Okay?
Alright.
So that we don't indulge too much, we need to remind ourselves to have healthy food as well. Okay?
Fair enough.
Good like
Yes.
this? You know what? We should always remind ourselves
Yeah.
of John 6:27 said we should never labor for the food that perishes, but we should always labor for the food that endures to eternal life.
Definitely.
And that's what we should be doing. We should be not focusing on food too much, but we should be focusing on the important food, which is prayer, which is fasting, which is reading the Bible. These are the things that lead us to eternal life.
You know what? I'm excited for the full meal.
Okay, we're going to make a quick full dish. So we're going to turn this on.
Alrighty. Alright.
Quickly,
Tell us what we've got.
put
What
some
we're
margarine,
making.
very healthy margarine, not
Okay.
too much. So you don't have too much cholesterol. So just a little bit here.
Do you want to explain to us what we have?
Yes, we have.
Alright.
We're going to make food.
Yeah.
Food this is diced tomato.
Yeah.
Then we're going to add food.
Yeah.
We're going to add some spices to it.
Okay.
And then we're going to add some pastrama and eggs to
Alright.
it.
As
What
long as
a-
we've got the basarm and eggs in it, we're good to go.
No, that shouldn't be the most important thing.
Okay.
Food is a very good staple diet, by the way.
Alright.
We love our food. Our cops love our food. Okay. So now we'll put in the tomato.
Tomatoes
This is
first.
half a tomato, diced
Alright.
tomato. Okay.
Okay.
So we need to just stir it a little bit.
Alright.
Cook it so it's nice and just soft.
Yep.
Soften it up. It's like a little omelette here, you know, like so then we're going to add the food. So just let it simmer a little bit longer, like this.
Sauteing them? Is that what
Sauteing.
it's called?
Sauteing, yes.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
add as much food as you want.
That's
This is a nice little food thing.
Alright. Yep. Oh, you don't put all of it?
Now I'm going to put some water there.
Okay. Yep.
Put a little bit because we're going to make it into a nice little dish. We turn this down a bit
Yeah.
because it's too hot.
Yeah.
Like that. Mix it together.
Smells good.
We mix it together so you get a nice consistency, like
Alrighty.
juicy kind of consistency.
Yep.
So that's coming along nice. You can smash
So
it
you
a
smash
little
it?
bit.
Okay.
A little
Yeah.
bit,
So don't leave it too like
No,
whole.
and then you're
Okay.
going to add a little bit of salt.
Alrighty.
Okay, just a
Yes.
little bit of salt.
Okay.
And then
Great.
we're going to add some pepper.
Alright.
We're going to add some cumin.
Nice.
Alright, and we're going to
Okay.
add a little bit of tahini sauce. Okay?
Ah, you're cooking it with the tahini.
Yes.
Okay.
Tahini sauce, so make sure it doesn't dry out.
Oh yeah.
Just give it a stir like that. Okay.
Wow.
Nice stir, so it's really amazing. Okay? And then we're going to put that aside. We're going to crack the egg. Okay?
In the middle?
In the middle, like that. Beautiful.
Oh yeah.
You can have another one. How's that?
Alright,
Just
let's
for
do
you.
it.
That's for you. Okay?
Okay.
So we've got 2 eggs in there, like that.
Okay.
And then we're going to put some pastrama around the side, like that. Like that. And then like that. And just let it simmer for a few minutes.
Okay. Yep. Let it cook.
Let it cook, yep.
Okay.
So just let it simmer a bit. The egg will cook nicely.
Beautiful.
You can help it along a bit like that. So it goes into it.
Yep. To get the heat through it.
Through it.
Yep.
So it doesn't stick too much.
Yep.
You can mix it up a bit so you can just let it.
Yep. And you want to keep the yolk whole, right? Okay.
You might not hold completely, but you just make it
Simple.
simple like that.
Alrighty.
Just break up the egg white.
Smells so good. Yep.
And then when you pour it in the plate, it just
Yeah.
runs everywhere. So you've got this nice soft egg with food and pastrama.
Yum.
There you go.
I'm so excited.
Just get all the runny bits off.
Yeah.
And then that's nearly done.
Nearly done.
And then we're going to add a little bit of more. That's about it, really. We've got a nice little porridge. What do you reckon?
Nice, Dad.
Okay,
That's
is that
great.
good? So
Yep.
we're going to plate it out.
Plate it.
Yeah. Plate it out like that, nicely. And the eggs can go on top, like that. So the idea is to let it run, the eggs run.
Yep.
Like that. And when you eat it, you can break it. Okay, so we've got that little bit there. We've got food, and we're going to add a little bit of
Garnish.
this off, a bit of garnish around it.
Yeah.
Some gargir, which is rocket, okay?
Yep.
Rocket. There, and then, what's that guy who's the Spanish guy that does all this?
The salt guy? The salt guy? From Dubai? Honestly? Killed it, Dad.
There you go.
You're
How's
exactly
that?
like him. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really good.
Is that
Is this
good?
my breakfast?
That's your breakfast.
Thanks,
And then, of
Dad.
course, you're going to put a bit of bread, so what you can do,
Yep.
Just heat it up a bit if you want, like that. And Bob, there you go.
There you go.
Here's
Thanks,
your
Dad.
little breakfast. Nice big breakfast for two.
Aww. So you're gonna sit with me and eat?
Not really. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Wow, that was really nice. Now I know what I'm going to be having for breakfast tomorrow.
You'll really enjoy it.
Yeah,
I can say
looking
that.
forward to it.
So a few weeks ago, we announced a new competition. So the theme is resurrection. So send us your skits. Andrew and I want to see creativity. So the top 3 submissions will be selected based on the criteria displayed on the screen and will be aired live on our show. Guys, this competition ends on Monday. It is the last day, so make sure you get your submissions in by then. The winner will be voted by you through online voting that will be open for 24 hours.
It's also worth noting that the competition is open to all youth around the world, not just Australian youth. The winners can order through the Kurong's website and they can deliver worldwide as well. Kurong is an Australian bookstore which are Christian.
That's awesome. So our blessed youth have again been working hard this week to bring you their voices and their faces. So turn up the volume and enjoy Prince of Peace by our talented youth.
Prince of Peace is risen, he is risen indeed. Alleluia, alleluia, the Lord is risen.
At dawn of Sunday, Mary Magdalene had gone with some spices and ointments for the beloved one.
But Lord Jesus is risen, triumphantly at dawn, and the angel of the Lord rolled over the stone. Mary wept when she saw the tomb was empty, and asked her, where have you taken the body? Then Lord Jesus said to Mary, I am He. I have risen. Go and tell everyone.
talented youth for that. Now I'd like to welcome our beloved youth, David Gibbs.
So just to remind everyone at home, you will have the opportunity to ask David your questions live on the show. If you wish to do so, please call us in on the number shown on your screen. Also, you can send your questions in using the Slido hashtag Lighthouse.
Hey, been Gibbs?
Yeah, pretty good, thank God. Just trying to stay busy. I feel like every day there's a different man bringing me food on a bicycle. Lots of
Uber
Uber Eats.
Definitely.
Probably read more than I have like in my whole life.
Really?
So no, but it's good. I've been enjoying it.
I heard you got a dog. How's your dog been?
Yeah, good. She just turned 1.
No way.
Last week.
That's
Yeah,
mad. So
you
she's
didn't
a
just
monster.
get a dog.
She's a monster. Yeah.
What dog is it?
German Shepherd.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Big dogs.
Oh, she's huge. She's like 40 kilos. She's been like howling lately. So.
Oh, not bad. Not bad. Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome, David. So, talk to us.
Alrighty.
Talk to us.
Name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God. I'm going to be annoying and make you guys read.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to share today just a message that I had over the last week about the encounter that we read in Luke 24, the 2 disciples that are on the road to Emmaus and they meet Christ, but they can't see him. So if you guys can very kindly read that. We're going to read from verse 13 in Luke 24, if you guys want to follow at home.
Now behold, 2 of them were traveling that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they walked together of all these things which had happened. So it was, while they conversed and reasoned, that Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were restrained so that they did not know him. And how, to them, what kind of conversation is this to you? Is that to you? Have with one another as you walk and are sad. Then the one whose name was Cleopas answered and said to him, Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem? Have you not known these things which have happened there in the days? And he said to them, What things? So they said to him, The things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, might indeed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him.
But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, beside all this, today is the 3rd day since these things happened. Yes, and certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us. When they did not find his body, they came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. And certain of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Sorry for making you guys read.
That's okay.
This is a really fascinating chapter because, Christ has just miraculously, we've witnessed the resurrection. The women have gone to the tomb and they found that the tomb was empty. Angels have appeared. Peter and John have run and they've confirmed for themselves with their own eyes that the tomb was empty. And we're hearing all this good news and it should be a time of joy. And for us as well, it should be a time of joy. But as we see here that when Christ is walking with the 2 disciples, he finds them sad and he finds them reasoning with themselves, talking to each other. And, they've heard these things, but for some reason, it's just not clicking. And for some reason, they're really sad and they're actually mourning. So it's a good question for us to understand, why is that? Because many times we talk about, okay, we just celebrated the resurrection. We should be feeling joy, but practically, how do we feel joy? And we always kind of wonder where that practical link is. And is there something that's stopping me from enjoying the joy and the power of the resurrection? And not just that, but we find in verse 13 that they were actually going away from the fellowship, away from where everyone else was, away from the church, to Emmaus, which is, basically just doing their own thing, the complete opposite direction. So obviously it was a tough time for them. These disciples, they were accustomed to the miracles of Jesus, the power of Jesus, his teaching and his sweetness, and they've just seen him be crucified and taken away. And it seems like everything has been taken away. And sometimes I think for us in tough times, we use that as an excuse to go and do our own thing. And sometimes we'll even say, if God takes this away from me, that's it. I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to do things my own way, type of thing. So it should be a time of joy. And actually, joy is a commandment for a Christian. There are many times in the epistles that St. Paul says, rejoice always. And even Christ speaks so much about joy. He's saying, these things I've spoken to you in John 15. These things I've spoken to you that my joy may remain in you and that your joy may be full. And in Nehemiah, we see the joy of the Lord is your strength. Psalm 16, which talks about the resurrection, says, in your presence is fullness of joy. And even Christ himself was speaking, and he spoke about a joy that no one will be able to take from you. So we kind of have to ask ourselves, where is this joy? Why is it that they ended up in a place of confusion and a place of sadness? Why is that? And could it be for us that we're walking and Christ is alongside us, but we can't see him? Could that actually be the case? And we have to ask ourselves why. And I think the answer comes in verse 15, that they were reasoning with themselves. They were talking and trying to work things out logically and trying to understand. And if we trust too much with our human reasoning, I think we can end up in a place of cynicism and reliance on ourselves. So one of the books that I was reading is called The Return of the Prodigal Son by Henry Newen. It's a really, really beautiful book. If I can, I'll just share a small quote from this book. And he's talking about joy and cynicism. So he says, cynics seek darkness wherever they go. They point always to approaching dangers, impure motives, and hidden schemes. They call trust naive, care romantic, and forgiveness sentimental. They sneer at enthusiasm, ridicule spiritual fervor, and despise charismatic behavior. They consider themselves realists who see reality for what it truly is and who are not deceived by escapist emotions. But in belittling God's joy, their darkness only calls forth more darkness. People who have come to know the joy of God do not deny the darkness, but they choose not to live in it. They claim that the light that shines in the darkness can be trusted more than the darkness itself, and that a little bit of light can dispel a lot of darkness. And he's saying, every moment of each day, I have the chance to choose between cynicism and joy. Every thought I have can be cynical or joyful. So I think, for us, as we get older, I think there is a temptation to become more hardened. We maybe have had certain real world experiences, and maybe we've been hurt, maybe we've been betrayed, maybe our understanding of society, politics, even things within the church itself. And we think that we've become realists. We think that we understand the real world and we know how to protect ourselves and how to be in control. But actually, if we think this way, we can be stopping ourselves from experiencing the joy because we're relying so much on this logic and cynicism that we can actually be blind to Christ himself walking there with us. So I think that's the reason why. And as we go on, that really becomes clear. The real heartbreaking verse, I think, comes from verse 19 onwards. And Jesus says, what things? After they said, are you the only guy in Jerusalem that doesn't know what's going on? Like, who's this stranger? You haven't heard the news? And they're talking about Christ. And they're saying these things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. So that's the really heartbreaking point, that the irony that they're speaking to the risen Christ and they're saying, we were really hoping that he was the one. He did all these amazing things and we thought this was the Redeemer of Israel. This is the one that would restore the kingdom of Israel and bring peace. And they felt that this kind of hope had been completely broken. And it's funny, like in the last week, there's been one phrase that's kind of been reoccurring, and that's the economy of God. So it's kind of how God in his wisdom manages the world and manages our lives. And this verse is really speaking to the economy of God. St. John Chrysostom said something really beautiful. He said, those measuring the divine things by human reasonings become ashamed of the divine economy. Yet it was not a subject for shame, but rather glorying. He's speaking about the cross and crucifixion. For in themselves, death and imprisonment and chains are matters of shame and reproach. But when the cause is added before us and the mystery viewed aright, they will appear full of dignity and a matter of boasting. For it was death on the cross that saved the world when it was perishing. So St. John Chrysostom is saying, like, these things, on face value, they seem so shameful and so ugly and very distressing that, they watch their master and their teacher who did all these wonderful things, they watched him be shamefully stripped down and nailed to a tree in front of everyone for unjustly. And it seems such a grotesque violation of justice. But St. John Chrysostom is reminding us that this is how our salvation came through. Christ, in his wisdom, designed that he would bring salvation through the cross and through his death and through an extremely shameful death. As we know, that's to cover our shame by his blood. So he's reminding us of that, the economy of God, what it actually looks like. And St. Athanasius as well explains that these disciples were scandalized by the cross. He's saying that before his passion, he told them everything, that he was going to suffer, he was going to die, that he would rise again. He told them everything. But his death had erased it from their memories. They were so shattered when they saw him hanging on the tree that they forgot about his teaching. They did not expect him to rise, and they did not hold on to what he had promised. And it's incredible the number of times in the gospel that Christ very explicitly and expressly told his disciples what was going to befall the Son of Man, that he would be betrayed into the hands of sinners, that he would be mocked, that he would be spat on, that he would be scourged, that he'd be crucified, and on the third day he'd rise again. He mentioned to this so many times. We see that in the Gospels. And yet, as St. Augustine said, they were scandalized. Their hope was shattered. Their expectations were completely shattered. They couldn't reconcile these promises from Christ's own lips with what they saw with him hanging on the cross for the sake of the whole world in complete shame, in complete weakness. And as it says in Isaiah, there was nothing that would make him attractive to us. There was nothing pleasant in how he looked in that moment. So really their expectations were shattered, even though hope was there, even though the tomb was empty, even though angels had told the apostles, even though the women and the other apostles had seen it with their own eyes, the tomb was empty, and it matched up with their words, their expectations were shattered. And I think for us, so many times, our expectations are completely shattered in a number of ways. First and foremost in the cross and understanding that concept of suffering, but also in how God deals with us, his economy with us. So many times we feel like God has done us wrong, or that he hasn't shown up when we've asked him to be there. In Jeremiah 2, there's a really beautiful passage where God is saying, I remember you, the kindness of your youth, the love of your betrothed, when you trusted me in the wilderness. And then in verse 5, he says, what injustice have your fathers found in me, that they have gone far from me and have followed idols and become idolaters? So God is saying, what wrong did I do to you? What sin is there against me that is causing you to flee from my face, to run from my presence? And he's asking us, like, what wrong did I do you? And we expect these blessings, especially because we know in Matthew 10, verse 30, Christ gives us a really beautiful promise that the number of hairs on our head are all numbered. Obviously, this is nothing that we've ever sat down and tried to count the number of hairs on our head. So it's saying that God cares so much that even the things that we haven't gone down to calculate, he knows and he cares about. And it's hard for us to reconcile this economy of God. We think, okay, you know everything about me, and you've promised that you care about even the numbers of hair on my head. Why is this going on? Why is this happening? And there's a really beautiful answer to that. St. Paul, who, he's regarded as the greatest apostle. More than half of the New Testament is attributed to him. God knows how many millions of souls are in heaven because of St. Paul. And in Colossians 4, the very last verse is very strange. He says, this salutation is by my own. I've written this letter. Paul, remember my chains. Grace be with you. Amen. Remember my chains. And St. John Chrysostom says that hear Paul's chains, and you will understand to be in affliction is no proof of being forsaken. So just because you are going through something really unpleasant, or you really feel that you're suffering, don't ever let that convince you that God has left you. It's impossible for him to forget us. And we have another promise in Isaiah 49 when God is speaking, he says, I've inscribed you in the palm of my hands. And we know that he did this through the cross, that each and every one of us are inscribed in his hands. It's impossible for him to forget us. But we don't understand this economy. Even, we'll compare how God is blessing me to how he's blessing others. In the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, where Christ is teaching us those who are first will be last. The ones that came at the very last minute, the 11th hour, they got the exact same pay as the ones that had been there all day. And not just that, but they got paid first. And to us, it kind of, that really bothers us, because in our human economy, that makes no sense and it's unfair. But this is God's heart, that his love can't be measured out differently. And in his wisdom, this is how he does things. And maybe this is the reason why the older son in the story of the prodigal son, he was unable to share in the joy of the father when he should have been able to, because he was thinking with this human economy that it's not fair. I never left your house. This younger son, he went and he was doing God knows what with God knows who. And I've been here this whole time. You've never done anything for me. And it's this wrong understanding that is going to rob us of the joy of the resurrection. It's going to let us sit in that place where we feel like our expectations have been shattered and we can't move from there. As soon as things don't go how we expect, we can really easily fall into that place of despondency. But I really feel like if we look at all the stories in the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, and if we really think carefully about these moments in our lives that God has acted, it really seems like his handwriting, that when our expectations are shattered is when God is about to reveal himself in the most powerful ways. And maybe that's because I need to have my expectations shattered if I'm going to have my eyes open to see him there with me and to actually have that joy and to understand that, like he said, he can work all things together for the good, that he can bring beauty from ashes, and that he is our hope itself when times are hopeless. And also that death and suffering is not the end. So I guess the next thing to wonder is, where do we go from there? Where do we go if we feel like we're in that place that our expectations have been shattered and we are really bitter and we're upset and we don't even have the capacity to want to stay around. We want to go and do our own thing 7 miles away from where we're meant to be. And I think, again, it comes back to this interaction where Christ is saying to them, why are you sad? What things? And I heard a really beautiful sermon given by Amber Wallace, who's the Bishop of East Africa, and he was explaining that this stranger's asking them, what's the problem? Why are you sad? And he was saying that this is how God is speaking to us when we actually go and pray. When we pray, because isn't it strange that Christ himself, obviously he knew the events of his own passion. He obviously knew his resurrection. He understood all these things. Why is he asking them, like, what happened? Why is he asking them, what this guy from Nazareth, what's the situation? And he's asking us because even though he knows, he wants us to express ourselves. Sayedna was saying that he wants to enter our inner heart, our inner room, to ask us, please open for me. Tell me about your fears. Tell me about your hurts. Jesus likes to hear our secrets, because when the secret goes out from us to him, something happens. And then Sayedna drew our attention to verse 26, where Jesus says, ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? And Sayedna is saying, we're speaking to God about loss and suffering and shattered expectations and disappointment that he hasn't shown up. And he's speaking to us about glory. And it's something completely different. He's saying, if I allow the stranger to join me in my journey, he'll speak to me about glory. What a great change. God wants to change our mind. God has the power. Let us listen to him. Let us listen to him that his death is not the end and our suffering is not the end, like his death. Let us allow him to take us up to the mountain to discover that this is the beginning of glory, not the end of life or the end of joy, that this is not true, that this is the deception of the devil, but it's the beginning. Many times I feel like we can be very, very overwhelmed by what's going on, and we get to a place where it's like we're on a bridge, and I know it's a terrible metaphor, but it's like we're on a bridge and we're about to jump, and we need someone to come and talk us down and bring us back to a level where we are capable of seeing the world for what it is once again. And I feel like this is exactly what Christ is doing in this verse when he asked them, why are you sad? What happened? And it reminds me of the verse in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. And God is saying, come now and let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool. So in verse 15, we saw that they were reasoning with each other. And now we have an invitation, instead of reasoning with each other, instead of reasoning with human logic that is going to completely misunderstand the economy of God, let's reason with God himself. Let's be honest with him. Let's tell him, God, you really shattered my expectation. When you took this away from me so violently, where were you? What was happening? What happened to all these promises? And if we actually engage in that, for sure, God will open our eyes and we'll see that he was there with us the whole time. And Sayedna said that beautifully. He said, we'll discover that this stranger is not a stranger. He's the good shepherd, the sweet one, the beloved one, the one who did miracles with me, the one who's carrying me and caring for me all these years. Only I haven't been able to see him these last few months. But for many years, he's been the one carrying me, caring for me, forgiving me, and I'll discover that he's with me and I'm not alone. So I really believe that is the cure, and that is the reason why Christ constrained their eyes, didn't allow them to see him in his risen glory, because he wanted to fix this problem with them. And it's really amazing how in the Gospels we always see that Christ is going out for the one. There are so many interactions where on an individual level, it's the Samaritan woman, the rich young ruler, the centurion, Lazarus, so many examples where he's going one-to-one. And we see here that even in his resurrection, nothing has changed. He's going to Mary Magdalene. He's going to Peter and restoring Peter from the 3 denials. And he's coming to the 2 disciples here to open their eyes to see how their understanding of God's economy was wrong, and to understand that what he said is true. His promises are true, and there is joy for them to enjoy there. I'll just finish, I know I've been talking a long time, with a quote from Buna Tadros Yelmaliti. He says, "Many believe in resurrection, and they even preach it, but they do not live it. They are still on the road to Emmaus, and they are in need of the Lord's appearance and his talking to them, so as to kindle their hearts in the inward life, and by means of the resurrected life, and thus they will live it before the departure from this world." So I think what he's touching on there is that, God's resurrection is absolute, and therefore, as a Christian, my joy should be absolute. There shouldn't be anything that's robbing me of my joy. And obviously, some of us go through extremely heartbreaking things. And I do believe there are some things in this life that we're never really going to get an answer about, a satisfying answer about, until we are in heaven, until we are before the throne of God. Some things perhaps aren't going to make sense, but that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy his peace and enjoy the joy of his resurrection that he wants us all to live. So I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. I really enjoyed that, and it's so nice to know that no matter what direction we're going to, God is still Jesus is walking with us that whole time. Just to remind everyone at home that the video of the hymn will be on Upper Room Media. So if you haven't downloaded the app already, you can access it there. And also, if anyone wants to ask any questions to David, so please send them through on Slido, #Lighthouse, or give us a call on the number shown on the screen. Okay.
Now, here's a skit by our beloved Sam Hannah.
What? Hey! Who are you? How you going? Khiran, welcome. I'm actually you from the future. I'm you in April 2020. April 2020? That's pretty cool. So you're here to tell me what happens in the future? Yeah, you can say that. It doesn't really work like that. You know how prophecies work with Isaiah, and he sort of prophesizes. Doesn't actually tell them exactly what goes on, sort of just gives hints. Sort of similar thing. I'm actually not allowed to tell you what happens. I can just sort of allude to it. Okay, cool. Tell me what's going to happen. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Let's start with the bad news. Look, it's good. It's good, yeah. It gets really, really good. What's happening now? What's happening now in the world? Well, we've been going through the bushfires. The what? The bushfires. You remember the bushfires? The ones we've been going through. It's been crazy. You remember? Oh yeah. Bushfires. Yeah, crazy. Yes, yeah. Definitely pretty bad. Yeah. To be honest, I completely forgot about them. But yeah, definitely not the hallmark of 2020. Man, I thought that'd be for sure. Yeah, you'd think. Yeah, you'd think. Yeah. But man, we had plans to lose weight. What happened to you? Yeah, no, it's still going ahead. It's definitely still going ahead. But if I were you, I'd maybe sort of not pay for gym membership anymore. Just stop your membership, because like, yeah, it's not any time anymore. It's actually no time. But you see what happened there. Man. But didn't we want to look good for the resurrection liturgy? For what? You know, the resurrection liturgy. Easter. The open, O King. That one. Resurrection liturgy. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah. No, I don't think you'll be making it to the resurrection liturgy. Let's just say that. You stumble and start sitting with the book and you're going to make it to the resurrection liturgy. Yeah, don't worry about the resurrection liturgy. Don't worry about it. Oh, man. Alright, well, at least tell me work's okay. Please. Work! Yeah, no. Work's been good. Very good. You know how you love to work once a month from home? You might be doing that a bit more regularly now. Maybe a little more than once a month. Just, I would personally, I would sort of try to get more comfortable clothing. So do this thing where you get the shirt and the shorts on the bottom. You remember how Mandy was the only one that used Zoom? She's a genius. You have any hobbies? Any hobbies at all? Knitting. Definitely you should get into knitting. Knit. Dude, we don't have time to knit. I'm so busy now at work and I don't have the time. You don't have time? No, you should definitely enter knitting. You'll have time. Trust me. You'll have. You see this? You think this is store bought? This was yesterday. This is Tuesday. This is what I did yesterday. Don't have time. Oh man. Alright. Tell me that I'm still serving, Like my Sunday school kids, and cleaning the church with Mimi. Like, oh man, the church is so dirty sometimes. Like, tell me that's still going ahead. The church has never been cleaner. Don't you worry. Mimi has never been happier than she is now. The church is spotless. But no, you should definitely, keep doing service. When was the last time you went shopping? You need, we know our digestive system. You're gonna need toilet paper, and a lot of it. My advice: you go in, you get toilet paper, and you get out. Don't talk to anyone, all right? Or else you end up on Facebook, all right? Don't talk to anyone. This is too much to take in. Honestly, if you look at things from a world point of view, it's brilliant. Petrol prices have never been lower. Climate change has never been better. Now you got people, you got animals roaming around everywhere. Have you heard of Joe Exotic? He's a good man. He'll keep you busy. You'll develop this new interest in, tigers and Gogglebox. You don't have to move from your couch to get a confession. Joe Magdi will become accredited position next year. We don't know how, but he'll do it. No, it's there's definitely some positives. I might actually tell you something, but if they move the youth meeting online, it's called Lighthouse, for example. Don't call in. But yeah, that's all the negatives. That's all the bad things. How about I tell you about the good? Honestly, the way that you're putting it right now, it doesn't sound like there's any good news in the world. Nothing. Man, this is so bad. Oh man. The good news is Christ has risen. Christ has risen? Oh, like if the whole world is in shambles and everything's upside down. What does that mean to me? That's the good news, because that's the only news. That's the only news that you need at the moment. You'll find that as the future moves on, that there are so many things out of your control, and there are so many things you used to put your trust in that at the moment you can't anymore. But there's only one thing that continues to be something you can put your trust in, and that's the joy of the resurrection. Despite everything that's going on, the joy of the resurrection is the only thing that will give you true joy. Despite everything. This year, that has never been truer than what's happening at the moment. Every other year, Christ rises and you go through the same routine. But this year, the resurrection for you gives you a different kind of joy and a different kind of peace. Because of everything that's going on, you'll find that this year, it's different. A peace that you've never seen before. A joy that you've never witnessed before. And that's the good news. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, I think I'm prepared now. I think I'm prepared to take on whatever the world has for me. Because I think resurrection, the joy of the resurrection is definitely the only news that counts. But seriously, you couldn't lose like a kilo?
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
So David, I was contemplating on what you said earlier in your talk about the 11th hour and how the person in the 11th hour received the same reward as the person in the first hour. How does that work, especially with us thinking such worldly thoughts? How can we make sense of that in terms of the Bible and in terms of what it said?
First of all, I just want to say it's a really fresh fade.
Oh, thank you.
Because I forgot to tell you before.
You.
So that parable, we find it in Matthew chapter 20. And obviously, Christ is giving us an explanation of the kingdom of heaven. So those who are working, the laborers in the vineyard, obviously all those who are calling in the faith, and we're working for the kingdom of God. But, you know, how wrong would it be if we're expecting to be rewarded on that basis? Again, going back to that idea of the economy of God. And actually, Matthew Henry explains that, I'll read it for you, I don't want to paraphrase. He says, "It never crossed my mind that he might have acted, like God would have acted on the supposition that those who worked in the vineyard the whole day would be deeply grateful to have had the opportunity to do work for their boss, even more grateful to see what a generous man he is." So, and he even goes on to say, is God naive to think that there would be great rejoicing when all those who spent the time in his vineyard, whether a short time or a long time, were given the same attention? So I think it goes back to our intentions. Am I doing this work for God? Am I serving because I'm expecting, you know, whatever in this life or the life to come? Or is it out of a love for God? And if it is a love for God, if my heart is really united with God's heart, I should be extremely joyful when I see someone who, even if they've come at the last hour of their life and they've accepted Christ, I should be joyful about that. And if I can't share that joy of God, if I can't understand that economy, then something's really wrong. There's no, my heart is, you know, there's something wrong there.
That makes sense. That's good. I understand now. No, I understand now. Yeah.
I'm glad.
All right. So we have some Slido questions from our viewers. So the first question is, why does it say their eyes were restrained?
Yeah, so I think as we discussed, I think Christ, and I think the church fathers confirm as well, that Christ deliberately wanted to restrain their eyes, to not let them see the glory of his resurrected body, so he could really tackle that issue of their misunderstanding and their what they felt was misplaced hope was actually complete fulfillment of his promises. He needed to correct that in them, you know, before they went on to do what they were going to do in the rest of their lives, and also just so they could enjoy the power and the joy of his resurrection.
Definitely. That's amazing. How do we encourage, another question is, how do we encourage those whose hopes in God haven't been met or they feel that God has let them down?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really hard and it's really heartbreaking, especially when, you know, someone you love and you just kind of want to like shake them and be like God loves you, like God hasn't left you, but like sometimes that's the last thing that someone wants to hear. And I think maybe one of the most powerful things is to really share your heart. I think the more open we are with each other as members of the same body, there's a lot of blessing there. So if you're able to share with them a time that you felt you went through the exact same thing and you really saw God come through and God really changed your life in that moment, you share that. That's a very, very powerful form of, you know, that testimony. And also, I think more powerful than that is to encourage them to, as we said, reason with God. Like go into their room and talk to Him, you know, man to man or woman to man, and really wrestle with God, really argue with Him, be extremely brutally honest. If they felt like disappointed and heartbroken by God, express that to Him. Let Him speak. Like then, once you've expressed your heart, it's on Him. There has to come a point in our lives where, is this real or not? You know, are the words in this book, is what we do every Sunday, is what we're doing right now, like, is this real or not? When I'm in my room, am I talking to a wall, or is my Creator there as He's promised? So there has to come to a point where, are these promises real or not? Because otherwise, as St. Paul says, we're all wasting our time. We may as well be eating and drinking and being merry. Like, if there's no resurrection, if there's no, then we're the most pitiable of all men. So there has to be a point where this is real. And I think those points where you're completely shattered and you feel like God has let you down, that's a really crucial turning point, because some people may never engage with God in that way and just choose to walk away. And others will be like, no, God, where are you? I want to hear your voice. I need you to come and take my hand now, and I need you to show me that these promises are real. And it's an opportunity.
Definitely something we should never forget. Another question. We're getting some questions coming in. Thank you for the amazing talk. So how do we stop reasoning and trying to understand things that happened from the past? Example, trying to understand God's path for us. Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think? I'm doing too much talking. What do you guys think?
What do you think, Nadia?
Back in Sunday school, Andrew.
I know, right? It feels like it. I don't know. I feel like trying to understand God's path is not easy. Yeah. Like, it's not something that happens, like, I think overnight. And I think it's something that comes with a lot of faith. It's kind of like a blind faith. But I think God has put certain stories in the Bible to show us that. And I think He's done things like the resurrection and things like that for specific reasons. Yeah. And I think generally, like, it's okay to understand that it's not an easy thing to understand. But like, it's okay. I think it's okay to sit back and think, like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening, and I'm not sure. It's not like we're questioning, like, we're not questioning God, but it's part of the struggle. And sometimes, like, our lowest lows is where we find God the most. Yeah, kind of. Exactly. I know it's horrible, like, but sometimes I don't know, like, personally, I don't know about anyone else, but when I'm the lowest, that's kind of when I'm kind of yearning for God. That's when I come back even stronger. Yeah. So it's a complex process, pretty much. I'm not really too sure.
And did you have anything you want to add?
No, I agree with you, Nadine. Look, to be honest, we don't really know the process of God. Like, we don't have to fully understand what God has planned for us. Whether we do understand it or not, that's not up to us. That's God put that in for us. That God put us through this process. And at the end of the day, God knows what's best for us. So I reckon just the best thing to do is just go with it. I know it's hard and it's easier said than done, obviously. But yeah.
I think for me, one of the most beautiful analogies is a really talented artist, and they're doing this big masterpiece, but obviously it takes time, and there's components here and colors and gradients and whatever. And at the end, it's really beautiful. But as it's going, it might look like a dog's dinner, but like when the artist is finished, it's really beautiful. And one of my favorite verses about this whole issue is Ecclesiastes 3:11. It says that God has made everything beautiful in its time. In its time, He's made it beautiful. And then it continues and says, except that no one knows what God is doing from beginning to end, and that He's put eternity into our hearts. So all of us are yearning for God. None of us are capable of understanding what God is doing from beginning to end, but He's promising that in time, He will make everything beautiful.
Definitely. I think we have 2 more questions. So one of our viewers wanted to tell you that it was a nice talk. What are practical things we may do now in isolation to further understand this concept?
the concept of like joy and.
I think so. Yeah.
I think just go all out and give yourself to God, because as we'll go on later into this the chapter that we spoke about, that they knew Him in the breaking of bread, that God is giving Himself to us. So really give all of yourself to Him. We actually have no excuse now. It's really beautiful. We have no excuse now. We have all the time in the world. We have all the resources. So we can read more, we can pray more, we can really challenge ourselves to discover God in a new depth. And of course, if we do that, we're going to reap so much joy from that, I think.
Definitely. And I think one last question. Thank you for giving us your time. How do we make God's love enough, especially if we feel lonely on earth?
Yeah, that's really tough. That's really, really tough.
Definitely.
And it's that's a hard question to answer in like 1 minute. Obviously, like that, it's a human need. We were created first and foremost that we need God. Like C.S. Lewis has that famous quote that everyone has a God-sized hole in their heart. We were created to be loved and known by our Creator. Yeah. And when that's not there, there's a big problem. But we're also created for each other. Like Mother Teresa says, if we have no peace, it's because we've forgotten that we belong to each other. So a lot of us are really struggling right now. And I think it's important, maybe a practical thing, that we should be reaching out to our friends and especially those that we know would be suffering. You know, some people actually, they love it. They're very comfortable being on their own, and other people are the complete opposite. So we should be aware of that. We should be praying for each other and checking in on each other to see how we're doing. And God willing, you know, this will all be over soon. But yeah, I mean, there are different schools of thoughts. There are some theologians that have said that, you know, love for Christ will eradicate loneliness.
Yeah,
so
definitely through this isolation.
Yeah, and he can fulfill us and touch us in a way that no one else can. Definitely. So there's definitely that school of thought. But
well, thank you, David. Thank you
Thank
for
you
joining
guys.
us. So don't forget, guys, that the competition ends on Monday. Don't forget to submit your skits. And thank you so much, David. I'm sure we've all learned something that we can put into practice throughout this week. So thank you around the world and at home for joining us on Lighthouse, which is bringing God's light into your home. So don't forget to tune in next week on Friday the 8th of May. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Now I See on CYC.
People finding Christ.
The desire of God to find His people.
Motives of change.
She told me a lot about the church, and I was like, this is interesting to me, you know, like I was actually rather keen on knowing all about it.
Many experiences.
Everything is planned, everything is according to God's will, in His time.
Turning points.
My baptism and my being reborn.
Of Now I See on CYC, I'm Anna Choi.
Now I See, a new, interesting show only on CYC.
Grapevine. I have a very important topic today I want to discuss with you guys.
General topics. We're going to talk about marriage and relationship.
Spiritual topics.
The liturgy is too long for those that have kids.
And sports.
He was really gay and was taking it out to ISIS. The real story was never addressed.
mercy and have kindness in your heart, so then you could go and help people. The disciples cried out in fear. What could this be? The stone hit the giant's forehead and Goliath crashed down to the ground. This story is called Noah's Ark.
What's an ark?
An ark is like a big boat or ship. I hope you guys learned something new, just like Jack did. See you next time with another story. Bye guys!
Teen Time on CYC. Today we're talking about social media.
How you see yourself, not just on the outside, but like also on the inside.
What's the end result? That we show our faith in action, and we said when we do that, we're showing Christ's love and we're showing Christ to others.
Complimenting like people, like not just about their appearance, because like appearance isn't everything, but also about like their personality and how like they deal with people.
Is it bad if I have feelings towards someone?
It's like an act of kindness, and it shows how much like we love Christ and how He loves us.
Thank you for watching Teen Time.